Hello everyone, welcome to DFW Technology Summit. Before I dig deeper, I would like to thank ElevateIT team, that is Casey and team, for giving the opportunity. This is an area I actually invest time on a yearly basis to learn from other leaders and also share my learnings as well. Okay, in this discussion, I'm going to touch base a little bit on Unisys background, that's where I work, and also focus on cutting down the speed to market by 80%, creating enterprise as a service. Okay, let's dig deeper. Right, quick background. I lead application services globally for Unisys. One of my passion is, as you can see here, cutting down the speed to market on key initiatives, creating team of teams operating model. I'll dig a little bit deeper into what I mean by team of teams operating model as well. I also contributed to Forbes, writing a few of the articles based on my past experience. So Unisys at a glance. So Unisys has actually presence in more than 90 countries and operations in 40 countries around the globe. One of the main mission for Unisys is to not only do digital transformation or application modernization, but do it securely. So Unisys is known for putting security in the front and center. So quick call out on the revenues here. So application services plays a significant role, around 17% with a 26% gross margin, which is close to $400 million. My goal is to take $400 million into $500 million very soon, partnering with all the key stakeholders internally and externally. So a couple of quick call outs here. As you will see, we do support more than 380 financial institutions worldwide to provide the better customer experience for their clients or for their customers. So we do have industry vertical offerings in terms of Elevate. I encourage you to take a look at the industry IP solutions after the discussion. And also, one of the other industry vertical offering is logistics, cargo, and also passenger airline systems. 9 out of the top 10 airlines depend on Unisys solutions. Okay, let's move forward. So this is an area where I am actually very passionate about personally and professionally. So when I joined Unisys 8 months back with my leadership team support, I created the vision and mission. So vision in a nutshell is develop the future applications beyond the borders, creating champions, okay? So what I mean by that is we should not be thinking about whether we have signed a CR or whether we have signed a change request for particular enhancements. We should not be focusing on that. We should be focusing on really what the client is asking for and really make that happen. As you can all imagine and also connect the dots to Amazon like customer experience, that's where we aspire to be. And that is our vision. And also if you translate the vision into the mission, so champion digital disruption on behalf of the clients. Even before the client asks, we should be championing the disruption. It could be modernization. It could be really providing the next best customer experience for the clients. And it's not possible if you don't focus on the operating model that you create. There are so many technologies evolving every day, but if you don't fundamentally change the operating model on the ground, it can only take you to a certain level, but it will not be able to, you will not be able to scale globally. So what you need to really focus on is you need to look at your workforce and operating model and create team of teams, empowering the teams. And if you are not familiar with the book called Team of Teams by General Stanley McIntosh, I highly encourage you to take a look at that. It was written long back and now most of the companies are following and also looking at all the benefits. It's basically, in a nutshell, it's really empowering the team on the ground, putting some guardrails. Okay, so translating that into a few other points, we need to create enterprise as a service. Gone are the days where you have your silo, you create a particular application that might not be useful for other business units in your organization. You need to think about whatever you deliver, whatever capability you deliver, you need to provide that enterprise as a service so other business units can consume. So with this thought process, you should be looking at cutting down the speed to market by 80%. Okay, again, I want to repeat, cutting down the speed to market by 80%, which we're going to talk about what kind of accelerators we can use to make that happen. And also, with all the emerging technology and concepts, we should be able to cut down the setup costs by 90%. We should not be building the servers from scratch. We should be reusing existing capabilities, either on private cloud or a public cloud. It's not just applicable for public cloud. There are a lot of options and capabilities in private cloud as well. Okay, let's go to the next one. So let's spend a little bit more time on this. So this is the topic of the this is actually a topic for the summit, where we're going to talk about how we can cut down the speed to market by 80%. So if we translate that into cloud done right, so it means different things for different team members and different organizations based on their maturity level. But let's actually take a step back on how do you do cloud done correctly and properly. There are multiple steps. Let's dig into each of them. Okay. When you start your journey, the first step is discovery and analysis. So this is where most of the companies still are adapting to the old legacy way of thinking, where either internally or externally, you will get a couple of consultants and you'll form a team. Team will spend 6 to 9 months figuring out footprint. It could be mainframe footprint, it could be .NET footprint, it could be Java footprint, it could be SAP footprint, and talk to the stakeholders, interview them, prepare a big list of applications to our infrastructure to start figuring out rationalization or modernization opportunities. So then after 9 months, you'll spend again 6 months to put together the dependencies and the roadmap. That roadmap typically is a 1 year to 3 years to 5 year journey and roadmap. So there is a plenty of opportunity there to cut down the speed to market, cut down the manual effort. The way that we need to really think about it is we need to figure out, hey, what kind of framework that we have, we need to create so we can accelerate the modernization journey. What kind of tooling out there in the market that we need to think through to cut down that assessment timeline. So as you know, there are hundreds and thousands of tools available in the market, including AWS provides its own tooling for assessment. Azure provides the same thing. I'm sure Google provides the same thing. I know they're acquiring a few other companies to accelerate the journey. On top of it, you have tools like Cast, tools like Device 42, and Microsoft recently acquired a company called Moveware with a goal to assess your application and infrastructure workloads very quickly. So my suggestion is, please form a team which can really look into multiple scenarios. It could be a mainframe footprint, it could be Java, it could be .NET footprint, then come up with a framework and also tooling. That will really help accelerate the journey. It should not be at 100,000 foot level. The tooling you should be able to really dig deeper into assessing at a code level. You need to figure out the dependencies on a real time as well. So so if you don't do that upfront, it will be a sticker shock when you actually put together a roadmap, and it's going to be a crazy scenario where your TCO and all that will have a negative impact there. So my suggestion is spend a lot of time upfront. When I say a lot of time, figure out and create that framework, or reach out to a few other companies who are experts in having that strong point of view. You should not be entertaining a consultancy or internally spending 6 to 9 months to come up with your application dependency and rationalization. Focus, and you should be able to really cut down the speed to market by 80% on this particular journey itself. Okay, let's assume that you have you were able to come up with a tooling and the framework. Okay, so what is the logical next step? So the next logical step is basically modernizing using microservices. That we are all very familiar with what microservices is. But the key here is really figuring out the architectural patterns that you need to use to modernize. A lot of companies I have seen personally, are adopting microservices, but very few companies spend more time on digging deeper into domain-driven designs. How do you actually set boundaries and come up with an architectural pattern and modernize with microservices? So again, you need a little bit of upfront due diligence on that front. If you don't have the blueprints created upfront, it's going to be a challenge for you. You need to come up with that architectural pattern based on DDD and few other concepts and give it to your team, so they will follow the standards and start modernizing legacy applications from start to the bottom. So microservices, you need to think about the polyglot persistence, where you don't need to depend on, this is just one example, right? So you don't need to depend on just using the database, same database for all microservices. You need to figure out the need, and based on your domain, and figure out, hey, if it is a real-time need, what kind of database you need to design. If it is a near real-time, what would that be? And if it is a batch-oriented scenario, hey, maybe you'll go with Hadoop or a few other database architecture patterns. So, but the key goal here is you need to really come up with a blueprint upfront so you can accelerate the journey there. You should not be just after the assessment is done, just start coding right away without any blueprints, without any architectural patterns. That's going to cause a lot of spaghetti code again. You might be writing microservices, but that might not be different than your current monolithic system, which is already a spaghetti code. So please spend more time creating the blueprints, architectural patterns, and which will accelerate the journey. So let's go to the next one. So then typically, hey, once you're done with your assessments, then you go to your microservices modernization journey. Then you need to be thinking about, hey, what are the advancements? What is emerging in the market? Containers, we all know the story. It has been there for a while. Everybody is very familiar with Docker containerization. But now with all the focus on Kubernetes aspect, Kubernetes management and orchestration layer, you should be thinking about how do you design your current workloads so you can easily migrate or scale across your private and public cloud or across multiple public clouds. So when you get a chance, please take a look at a Forbes article I have written where you need to be, what you should be thinking about before this journey. Having or writing a Hello World program using either a AWS Kubernetes service or Azure Kubernetes service or Google One is very easy. But the key challenge is how do you migrate your current application workloads as containers. A lot of companies out there can help with their journey, but they start from scratch. Key is for you to figure out which companies will enable and accelerate their journey very quickly. Few companies have invested very heavily on figuring out your current workloads and really thinking about, hey, is that workload containerizable, or can you containerize very quickly or not? What are the things you need to watch out? If it is a big monolithic application, can you even containerize that big one? Do you even have an equivalent horsepower in the private and public clouds? All those things you should be thinking about. And also you should be thinking about, again, going back to from top to the bottom, what would your database architecture look like in the containerization? What is your data strategy? You need to be very clear on that aspect as well. So this market, actually, containers and Kubernetes is going to go crazy, as all of you can imagine. In the next 3 years or so, close to 70% of the workloads will be converted to containers and Kubernetes. But please note that greenfield implementation is very easy, but you need to be thinking about how can someone help you convert your current workloads just like that. Again, start challenging the vendors, figure out how you will spend more time upfront on the design aspect there. So again, that's an area where you have plenty of opportunity to cut down the speed to market. Let's assume, hey, you are done with assessments. You started modernizing the business friction points using microservices. Then you started adding the containers flavor. Then the question is, how do you go about automating the heck out of all these pipelines? That is from continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous monitoring. So you should also be thinking about creating that DevOps, DevSecOps platform as a service. Okay, I'm going to actually share a little bit of high-level view on what we are working on. But here, the goal is you should not be creating silos in terms of testing. You should not be creating security integration on its silo. You should not be creating operations as a silo. You should be thinking about full spectrum, continuous integration, all the pipelines, including unit testing, automated testing, and also your security testing, that is static and dynamic testing. There are a few tools, thing you might have familiar with, Veracode or AppScan or a few other things. But the key is integrating all these bits and pieces, including performance testing, into this umbrella, that continuous integration and continuous deployment. How do you go about blue-green deployments? What is feasible and what is not feasible. And I have worked in my past life at Fortune 100 and Fortune 500. Most of the people talk about blue-green deployments. Very, very few, that is Facebook's or Google's or Netflix of the world, only implement the blue-green deployments. There is plenty of opportunity for us to champion and implement that blue-green deployment, that is continuous deployment aspects. Then let's say you're done with continuous integration, continuous deployment. Let's talk about continuous operations. What does that mean? Hey, how do you do the compliance aspect? How do you make sure operations are seamless? How do you integrate your monitoring aspect? So the full pipeline you can actually create as a service, DevSecOps as a service, and give it to your business units so they don't need to reinvent the wheel. Obviously, it goes back to license optimization, and also takes a lot of effort by other teams. There will be a lot of productivity gains as well. So think about how you create the DevSecOps as a service, not a siloed for your organization. Okay, assuming that you are done with all these 4 steps. So what's going on in the industry? The next thing is there is an emerging concept called low code, no code. Essentially, what it does is enables the citizen developers to do coding without depending on hardcore development teams. So what does that mean? So currently, few companies, for example, OutSystems or ServiceNow or Microsoft Power Apps, they're investing heavily to provide the capability for the actual business users. It could be a business analyst or business users to drag and drop and create those applications or capabilities very quickly. So one example I would like to give is, all of you know Bill McDermott's story. He was CEO at SAP. He grew, his success is growing SAP business from 50 billion to 160 billion. Now he's the CEO of ServiceNow. One of his goal is to enable or empower citizen developers. Okay, the way that he is actually going after is, if you have not taken a look, think about how he is partnering with a few major global solution integrators in the world on how to create industry verticals. How do you create a banking solution? How do you create a telecommunication solutions? And how do you create those apps or capabilities so citizen developers can quickly create those capabilities without depending too much on the typical hardcore development team members? Okay, so you need to be thinking about this as this business is going to, this market is going to go crazy again, from $3 billion to $50 billion in the next 3 years or so. So recapping how you need to do the cloud done right, cut down the speed to market by 80%. These are the logical steps. The goal is, again, this is not a rocket science. Most of you are familiar. The goal is to really figure out in each of the steps, how do you convert your current application workloads very quickly with these concepts? Okay, again, greenfield implementation is very easy. When you go to when you go to companies where you have a lot of application workloads running in legacy systems, key is to figuring out and converting them into these concepts very quickly. It could be accelerators, it could be frameworks, it could be some other coding aspects that you need to do to cut down the speed to market. So if you have that vision and if you're on a mission to cut down speed to market by 80%, you should be asking all these questions either with your vendors or internally to cut down the speed to market. So it also added a note for some of the couple of blogs and also Forbes articles I have written. If you have a minute, take a look and please share your comments as well. So let's go to the next one. So here I'm just taking one example of a application modernization decision tree. I think most of you are very familiar in terms of 6 R's that typically you use when you do application modernization or rationalization. And now AWS has come up with 7 R's, added one more. But here at Unisys, we are actually championing taking this to the next level. Most of the 6 R's or 7 R's are very conceptual, and you need to create a workflow where you will be able to empower your team to take the decision very easily. So a couple of examples highlighted here. There are, hey, how do you retain some of your workloads? How do you retire some of your workloads? If you go with a COTS application, typical scenario is most of the companies have SAP CRM on-prem, which is a big, typically which is a big footprint on-prem. How do you actually go with Salesforce CRM? If it makes sense, that's a cost application, and you retire those applications. And also some of these applications, you need to re-architect to take the full benefits of cloud aspects, right? Cloud agility there. And also, if you look into few challenges, some of the applications you will not be able to do anything. With the 6 hours or 10 hours, you need to simply retain because of the legacy logical code you might have written, but you need to really figure out how do you containerize them and how do you start modernizing a little bit of it. So please think of this as one example of creating those granular artifacts so it will be easy for the team to take a decision. Second is, it will be really focusing on business friction modernization. We should not be thinking about modernizing the heck out of all the thousands of applications and boiling the ocean versus, hey, what is the current business friction point or a pain point? How do you address using this concept? So you should really start there and get that ROI real quick to show the benefits and also accelerate your journey. Okay, let's go to the next one here. Sorry, I keep going back. Let's go to the next one. So this is also an actual example of, hey, how do you do the app modernization using Azure? So follow the same 6 hours or 7 hours or 10 hours. You will typically follow this pattern where you have thousands of applications on-prem. If you wear that hat of repurchasing, rehosting, replatforming, and refactoring, so these are a few examples. I'm not going to walk through all of them. That should give a flavor of where and how you need to consider those capabilities under these buckets. Okay. Again, note that you have low code, no code aspect as well. That market is going to boom. So in AWS, you have Lambdas, and here in Azure, we have functions and Power Up. So we should be thinking about how can we create the capabilities, business capabilities using these platforms without too much investment. So, okay, that's also one quick example for you to think through. So the other aspect here is, as I briefly mentioned, how do you create enterprise as a service? So when you look at enterprise as a service, based on your domain and based on your industry, you should be thinking about, hey, how can we make this as an industry vertical offering? If you're in healthcare, how can you think about either creating your own industry vertical or leverage the COTS application? As part of that also, you should be thinking about, hey, how can I actually deploy the incremental load multiple times in a day rather than on a monthly or a bi-monthly basis. So this is just one example of how do you create your DevSecOps, development, security operations pipeline. And there are a bunch of tools and lots of flavors out there in the market, but you need to really zoom in and create your own flavor. And this is just one example I wanted to paint a picture on. How do you do your continuous integration? Here you might see Bitbuckets of the world. Hey, there could be Azure, it could be Ansible, whatever it is. But the theme here is you need to standardize the implementation and usage in your organization, and create these pipelines on how do you do the code analysis aspect. How do you actually package those applications? How do you deploy and also release? Hey, what kind of a templates that you need to create for your blue-green deployments, and also for your functional testing, what do you integrate? For your security analysis, what are the factors you need to really think through? Hey, what kind of static code analysis you need to think through? What kind of dynamic code analysis you need to think through? So in my past life, one of the challenges we ran into was we were able to do static code analysis very easily in real time, but dynamic code analysis was a challenge. It was 5 years back. It used to take close to a 15 or 20 days for us to scan 20 million lines of code. Even though we worked with a vendor at the time, we could not cut down that speed to market, cut down that timeline. And now, with a lot of enhancements, even that vendor was able to now come up with a real-time integration of dynamic code analysis. So you should be really thinking about how can we deliver these bits and pieces and capabilities on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. Okay, think about Netflix. There are some scenarios where there are use cases where they deploy the code every 15 minutes or so. So think about how do you design, how do you break down your monolithic application, how do you create those Docker images, how do you come up with a blue-green deployment so there won't be any impact to the production, and how do you do scanning before you release, how do you validate your code coverage. Again, that's a typical challenge in any organization. I have not seen a lot of companies where you see 70% close to a code coverage. You will see 10, 15%. That also goes back to balancing your delivery timeline and all those things. But making sure those standards you establish and making sure you incrementally deliver the code to production is a key. And on top of it, hey, not only you just deploy, but then once you deploy, what kind of functionality you will bring to the table in terms of looking at continuous compliance. What does that mean? Hey, your company might be obligated to comply with some standards. It could be HIPAA, it could be PCI DSS, it could be GDPR, whatever that is, that standard, right? How do you integrate a tooling so you should not worry about, or you should not be thinking about knee-jerk reaction when a security issue happens, versus continuously how do you monitor, continuously how do you make sure the compliance in place is something that you need to really think through. And also on top of it, how do you do optimization? Hey, are your servers being used enough? Is there any opportunity for you to automate to reduce the footprint or increase the footprint based on the demand? Again, those things should be integrated into this full pipeline. And the goal here is the real-time aspect. Okay, so please think through how you provide the end-to-end DevSecOps pipeline, and how do you create and offer this as a service internally to your all business units. Again, at Unisys, I want to just bring a flavor of Unisys a little bit here. So as I mentioned briefly, Unisys is known for putting security in the front and center. So Unisys offers Stealth as a key security. And here, it cuts across different layers. We have an offering in terms of Stealth Identity. We have an offering in terms of integrating Stealth into Azure, AWS, ServiceNow, few other areas. So the clients, they don't have to worry about bringing in the security flavor. So this also is a enterprise as a service offering from Unisys as well. So the key takeaways, please figure out how you can use this as a benchmark or a flavor and create that end-to-end pipeline. Okay, goal is to cut down the speed to market by 80% by other organizations in our business unit. Okay, so let's go to the last one. So here I briefly mentioned about creating an operating model. So gone are the days where you will see typically an organization divided by a sector. You will have typical architects. You will have people managers, you will have devs and testers, and you multiply it or to replicate that across your organization. You will see a lot of dependency, a lot of not dependency, a lot of duplication. And also most of the organizations have siloed structure where one business unit doesn't talk to other, or there is not an environment for them to collaborate. Okay, so we need to acknowledge and create something called team of teams. You need to be thinking about, hey, what are the business priorities and capabilities that the firm is going to create in the next 1 to 2 years, and based on that you need to create those organizations and make it as a very fluid organization structure, empowering the team on the ground. This is one example of what we try to do in application services at Unisys, in terms of, hey, what are the things we should be focusing in terms of taking Unisys to the next level of maturity? Obviously, application modernization, that cloud native capabilities, and application architecture and emerging technology to deliver those applications very quickly. And also something I'm going to touch base very quickly on, the Agile and Scrum. We are actually taking Agile and Scrum of Scrums, or scaled Agile to the next level of maturity. We are calling that as a lean biz. And that's also a capability we are building. And we just discussed about the automation that's going to play a bigger role in terms of application development. At the same time, we also acknowledge that legacy, that is typically application managed services, application support, that is pretty much a bread and butter for most of the organizations. And we will be keeping that all as a priority as well. The key goal is creating an environment or a channel for your passionate technologies to be part of the journey. So as I mentioned, we need to break the silos and create an environment for the team to collaborate more, really give them an opportunity to be part of the journey. Okay. Most of the passionate technologies, they are interested in learning, take them to the next level. But as a leaders of any of the organization, we need to be thinking about how do you create that operating model with which you have an opportunity at scale, with which you will be able to scale your teams globally and take them to the next level. Okay. Again, something I have written here on Forbes. Please take a look when you get a chance. Looking forward to your input and how you are also creating the similar environment as well. Okay. Let's go to the next one very quickly. So here I want to touch base on one of the proud aspect at Unisys is the NPS score. The reason why I wanted to bring it up is most of the things we discussed so far, the bottom line is how can you help your client or a customer internally and externally? And how do you focus on that net promoter score? How do you listen more and put the client in the front and center? How do you do journey mapping with them? How do you think about bringing in the design thinking aspects and wearing that empathy hat? And with all these things, you should be able to move the needle very quickly on the net promoter score. And that's the bottom line, right? Most of the projects are centered around creating that next generation customer experience. Okay. And also, let's focus on another aspect I wanted to quickly bring it up is all of us have read a lot of articles either in Gartner or few other industry well-known analyst reports. But at Unisys, we are also focusing on something called Cloud Barometer, which actually surveys a lot of global leaders and looks into opportunities for improvement. As you can imagine, there is plenty of opportunity for improvement in terms of cloud journey. We just discussed about a few areas, but this is also a quantitative aspect. Please take a look when you get a chance on how you can take this quantitative aspect and help with the journey as well. Your own journey, your current company, or your customer journey. Okay. So very quickly, we are almost at the end. This is something that we just put together. Please take a look on, hey, what are the typical business challenges you will see across multiple clients globally, and what are the solutions we are offering. And also, I want to touch base and end this year. So lean business, what is lean business? So lean business is combining CMMI expertise that we have, and also combining Agile at scale or scaled agile, combining the Scrum of Scrums, combining the lean principles. Goal is to adapt to a existing current client project management or delivery practice. Goal is not to create one on top of existing stuff, focusing on the 4 key areas, the bottom line: quality, stability, speed, and cost. Okay. And this is something we're calling this as an adaptive project management practice. And not to reinvent the wheel, but how quickly we can adapt to existing current project management practice. I'm sure some of you are still figuring out how you can take your project management practice, which is a typical waterfall model practice, to the next level, agile, and also lean principles aspects. Please think about how do you bring all your other expertise in terms of lean principles and create an environment where your team will be able to quickly adapt to agile. And the culture aspect is the key thing. Once you have the culture, once you create that culture, agility, agile culture, the other things, it could be DevOps or DevSecOps, it could be emerging technology, that will be very easy. Technology is just an enabler and it will follow. The key here is creating that operating model, creating the change in the culture, and take your organization to the next level. Okay. All right, that's all I have. When we meet actually on July 10th, we'll be curious to understand your journey, and also let's spend more time on question and answers on what other expertise, what other challenges you ran into, and also I will share a few of my other practical examples as well. Okay. Looking forward to seeing everyone on July 10th. Thanks again for joining me.